there's a 5% chance that a person who commits a serious crime in California will end up doing state prison time for that crime.
5%. Today, part 2 of our look at the criminal justice system with Walt Lewis, who for 30 years was a deputy district attorney in LA County, and former TV news anchor Patty Malone. You might be shocked to find out how few crimes are ever solved or end up in someone's going to jail, and how police and system screw-ups have contributed to the problem. And is the media giving the public an accurate look at what's going on? Welcome back, Patty.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again.
Walt, a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So it is shocking to me that half of the murders in LA County are never solved?
Yes, that's right. About 51% of the murders, the most recent statistics, are not solved. There's a 51% clearance rate when you consider both the sheriff and Los Angeles Police Department.
So it's kind of like flipping a coin, whether they're going to catch you.
Why would that be?
Drive-by shootings, it's very few people want to cooperate with the police, and they're afraid. So there are a lot of good reasons why witnesses will not come forward and cooperate.
Nationally, it's a little bit higher, a little bit better, about 60% or so?
It's about 60% nationally, 62% nationally of murders that are cleared by an arrest. Now that doesn't mean that these 62% are charged, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're convicted. It's a much lower percentage that are charged and convicted than are arrested, because every district attorney's office has a rejection rate. We have about a 35%, 34% rejection rate, and that's not just murders, that's across the board for felonies.
And the numbers are staggering too. I mean, how many murders in LA County every year?
I'm not sure.
Or California, I should say, it was what, 2,500?
No, I'm not sure how many murders there are in California. We have in the United States about 16,000 murders a year.
16,000.
In the United States.
Well, and I believe you said that over the past, whatever the time period was, that there have been more murders than, what, I mean, all the major wars, World War I and II?
Yes.
And
Unbelievable.
Between 1960 and 2003, there were more murders in this country than all of the American soldiers killed in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. Approximately 780,000 people have been murdered in those 43 years in this country.
Well, we aren't hearing about that on the media. The media is definitely not covering all of those murders, that's for sure.
And I found a quote, a statistic here, Walt, actually, that you gave me earlier from the LA Times, said that, quoted California Attorney General Jerry Brown as saying, we have 2,000 murders a year in California. That's 10,000 since the Iraq War started. As upset as people are over the Iraq War, far more murders in California, at least of Americans. You say Jerry Brown was a few years off in a statistic. The last time California's murder rate was that low was in '99. In 2005, California had 2,500 murders and 2,400 in 2006. So again, just a lot of murders in California. Yes. And how much time, so the 50% that actually get caught or that are solved, how much time do you actually spend in jail for murder?
Well, in California, because of Proposition 7 enacted in 1978, people serve quite a long time. Second-degree murder is now 15 to life, has been since 1978. First-degree murder is 25 years to life. Good. Prior to this, to 1978, the average second-degree murderer served about 4 years and 10 months. 16 and 17-year-old murderers served about 2 years. But that was changed when the people put a ballot initiative, voted on a ballot initiative, Proposition 7, which changed everything.
So California, 20 years, and nationwide about 8 years. For murder.
In 2001, the median sentence for murder in the United States, the actual time served, was 8 years, 8 months. But that's up from 5.5 years actual time served in 1988.
Now, how can you kill somebody and get away with? I thought you faced like life in prison. I mean, is there? How can you
That's the
Kill somebody and get
sentence.
away with 5 years in prison or 8 years even.
That's the
20 years minimum sounds right.
Life in prison is the sentence that is handed down in court by the judge and reported by news anchors and in the press. But life doesn't mean life in prison. But I don't think it ever has meant life.
Well, the news media reports what they're told.
Exactly.
If they say, if you hear it's going to be life in prison, then that's what you've got to tell people.
Right.
That's what you report to people.
Well, and we were wondering too, is there a political side to this where even though you're a former deputy district attorney and you're coming clean and telling what's going on, is it possible though that when maybe when they say they're prosecuting people, they sound more aggressive or make it sound like they're going for the maximum because it sounds better than saying, look, this guy's going to get no time at all.
I don't want to speculate on the motives of the press. They have the wherewithal to find out how much time people spend in jail or in prison for various crimes. We just don't see that printed very often.
But that's usually after the fact, too.
Yes.
It's not usually when they're initially reporting on the story that's happening. Usually the sentencing comes in later, and they might ask something like, how long did they stand to serve in prison? And they'll
Right.
hear like life or 20 years or whatever, and so that's what's reported.
That's right. And so it's not the individual reporter's fault. They report what the judge said. And what the judge said isn't reality in most cases. The judge doesn't announce, for example, that most convicted felons in California get 50% off of their sentence
Right.
for good time, work time credits.
And the parole figures are unbelievable. You say that in 2006, it's something like 77% of the prisoners were paroled in California?
We have approximately 170,000 inmates in the 33 California state prisons. In 2005, 122,000 were paroled. That was 72%. The following year, 132,000 were paroled, which was 77%. That's right.
And I'm just trying to understand what that means because they're saying, they're not just going home for the weekend. You're saying they're going home for good.
Well,
or until they do something else and get sent back.
Now, 70% of those parolees are returned to prison for either new crimes or parole violations within 24 months. So you get 70% coming back.
So crime still doesn't pay, even though all those people are getting out or serving considerably less sentences.
The statistic that is the most meaningful for me, I think, of all those statistics is that there's a 5% chance that a person who commits a serious crime in California will end up doing state prison time for that crime.
5%. I said flipping a coin at the top of the segment. I'll go out saying 95% in your favor. Not that I'm advocating it, but my God.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. And we are back with Walt Lewis and Patty Malone today discussing the criminal justice system and some of the issues facing it. Well, to give the media a little bit of credit, you do mention some statistics that the facts that the Los Angeles Times has reported on as far as what's happened with fingerprints and DNA evidence with LAPD.
Yes, I do mention that although I've worked with a lot of Los Angeles police officers, mainly detectives over the 32 years that I was a DA, and some are just wonderful. Most are conscientious, hardworking, but there are problems with the LAPD that have been brought out in the LA Times and recently. And one problem is that the Los Angeles Police Department is has a backlog of 7,000 DNA specimens that have not been analyzed. And these represent people who are victims of crime. And they have been sitting in cold storage for as long as 10 years and more. And it was recently discovered that some of these DNA specimens that have gone beyond the 10-year period is beyond the 10-year statute of limitations. So the rape victims in those cases are never going to see justice because there was no prioritizing the analysis of those DNA specimens.
So beyond the statute of limitations, and I believe you said also they're supposed to notify people if nothing's being done with it, but that's not even happening. There's been a breakdown in notification.
It was brought out that they have not been complying with the law and notifying people.
So how is it possible for, I mean, why do 7,000 cases sit there not being...
The chief of police says he doesn't have the budget to do it, doesn't have the money to do it, and he gets his money from the city council, and we've had press on this, negative press now for a year. In November of '07, a year ago, it was brought out, again in the LA Times, that there were 6,700 samples that were not analyzed. Now it's 7,000. So nothing has happened in the last year. Finally, within the last 3 weeks, the city council authorized $1 million to hire, for the LAPD to hire more DNA analyzers.
You also mentioned some of the problems they've had with fingerprinting.
Yes, it was just revealed recently that 2 people whose prints were misidentified were charged with crimes. And this is absolutely unacceptable because...
So they went after the wrong people.
Wrong people, wrong people. And the LAPD did not follow their own protocol, which requires 2 supervisors to do an independent examination of those prints. And subsequently, because of that, these 2 people were charged with crimes, and the cases were ultimately dismissed. But this is very serious because DAs and jurors and judges, when we find that there's a print match, that's it. I mean, we never consider the possibility that there's a misidentification. The good news is that the LAPD has fired the person involved in this, and they are revamping their fingerprint section, their unit. But it is so bad, the fingerprint unit has taken a back seat, and their headquarters are in a refurbished kitchen, and they have such little space that there are 3 fingerprint examiners to each desk.
Wow.
So,
well, is that part of the reason, we said at the top of the show that half of the murders in LA County are ever solved? You say burglaries have a 14% clearance rate, 25% for robberies, 17% for arson. 58% of rape cases, it says nationwide, I guess, results in somebody being prosecuted. Is system incompetence part of the problem as well? You were saying, intimidation, but I mean, is there just a lot of negligence in the system, or incompetence, or not enough budgets, or staff, or people, and do people know about this? I mean, is it?
I don't think people know about this. I really don't. I think somebody should do a big story in the media with this.
I think that the press, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, I don't think we take crime as seriously as we should. And I think part of that problem is that the press wants to de-emphasize crime. And
I don't think so.
Okay.
The press wants to de-emphasize crime?
No, I don't think so. I think that the press wants to cover stories about crime, and I don't think that they're in favor of the criminal. I really don't. And I don't think they de-emphasize crime. There's nothing in my experience that emphasizes that or indicates that at all. Whenever there's been something to report, we always covered it and did the best to be accurate that we could and include all the information that we had that was available to us.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
We've had ballot initiatives on about the criminal justice system on the ballot since 1978.
Uh-huh.
The LA Times has taken a position in almost every ballot initiative, and there have been many, many in the last 30 years, that that position is against the initiative, against the interest of the district attorney, against the interest of crime victims. For example, in 1982, we had Proposition 8 on the ballot. Proposition 8 was called the Victims' Bill of Rights. It gave victims more rights than they had ever had. It gave them a right to restitution. It gave victims the right to speak at a sentencing hearing for the defendant, and other rights as well. The Times came out against Proposition 8, and in order to convince their readers to vote against it, they falsely told their readers that Proposition 8 would condone the use of wiretapping by the police without a warrant. Absolutely untrue. That was not the case before or after Prop 8 passed by a wide margin.
Well, let me ask you, since Patty's a former TV anchor, I know you have a take issue with, certainly with the LA Times in particular, as well as their editorial policies and positions. What about TV news? How good of a job are they doing?
Not bad. Not bad. However, I think that TV news, I think the anchors, I'd like them to read the book so they would know more about the criminal justice system than they know, because they repeat myths over and over again, and I have a feeling that they really are not sure what they're talking about.
Well, in some cases, can I butt in here for a
Sure.
second? In some cases, I'm thinking there is some sensationalism. So, for example, if they're talking about how somebody could get life in prison, yes, they're more likely to promote the longer sentence. Or if the chances are 15 to 20 years, the person does stand to go to prison for 20 years. They're more likely to do that to sort of exploit the controversy or take the most sensational aspect of it. That's true, but at the same time, I don't think anybody would intentionally be inaccurate with anything that they're reporting or want to de-emphasize crime at all.
I don't think it's intentional. And just another little example, when news anchors say that the case is weak because it's based only on circumstantial evidence. The fact is that I don't think they know what they're talking about because they don't know what other kinds of evidence there is. And circumstantial evidence is the strongest kind of evidence a DA can have in a case. DNA evidence and fingerprint evidence, for example.
As long as the LAPD hasn't.
Right.
We'll be right back.
Right.
And we are back with Walt Lewis and Patty Malone today talking about the criminal justice system. And I just dropped my notes all over the floor, so that's okay. Well, Walt, you say one consequence of the public's not really understanding the way the criminal justice system works, and your book is called The Criminal Justice Club, referring to the judges and the defense attorneys and the criminals and district attorneys, people who really know, and as opposed to the people who don't know, like the police and the media and the general public. But you say one consequence is that juries, you think, may be influenced or kind of may acquit people or be a little more lenient on them because they're afraid the system's going to throw the book at them. They have this idea that, that everybody's going to prison, or the evil DA is going after them and they're going to throw the book at them. So people may be, is that part of the media's perception causing that? Or where do they get this perception that the system is just going to throw the book at people, where you're saying people are getting away with a slap on the wrist?
I'll give you an example. When Michael Jackson was being tried for child molestation, I think in Santa Barbara, the news, I heard news reports that if he was convicted, he would be sentenced to 20 years in prison and that he would be housed with Charles Manson. Now, nobody knows where a defendant who's not been convicted yet is going to be housed. The judge doesn't know, the DA doesn't know.
Where do you think they got that information? They must have done it somewhere. They didn't just make it up.
Is that sensationalism, or do you think there's actually...
They must have gotten that information somewhere.
They did get it from somewhere, but it was not a reliable source. They could have checked with the Department of Corrections. They could have checked with our prison system, and they would have found out that nobody can tell them that Michael Jackson is going to get do 20 years, or that he's going to be housed with with the Charles Manson. And I think that kind of thing planted in the press makes it very difficult for jurors to convict when they see this icon, and they're going to
the king of pop, going to be with Charles Manson.
They're going to be responsible for putting him there with Charles Manson for 20 years.
Now, aren't the juries supposed to not be reading the news media and watching the news media? Aren't they supposed to be unaware of this during that process?
In theory, yes. That's right.
But you're saying they actually are exposed to it?
Well, I can't say that. But if they don't follow the instructions of the judge, or they hear it on television as they're walking through the room, or their wife tells them, or their child tells them, it's not good. And somebody planted these stories in the press, and the press went with it.
Well, and again, one theme you've raised before is the idea that the press tends to favor the criminal more than the victim. Do you think that that's true, that there is more favorable coverage generally, again with the LA Times editorial position, that sort of thing, but even just in basic coverage of the news, or not?
No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, Patty brought up the subject last time that individual reporters who go out to crime scenes don't have any sympathy with the defendant, and I have no quarrel with that at all. Of course, I'm talking about institutional bias. I'm talking about, and I'll just give you one more example, Prop 115 was on the ballot in 1990. It gave us the people, the DA, we represent the people of the state of California, we're the people's lawyer. That's who our client is. It gave us the right for the first time to a speedy trial, and it gave us the right to discover, to find out the witnesses who the defense intended to call. We never had those rights before. The defense always had those rights. We never have. The Times, in their desperation to defeat Prop 115, told their readers in an editorial that Prop 115 would put at risk the right of women in California to have a safe, legal abortion. There was no mention of abortion at all in Prop 115. It just wasn't. This is a desperation.
But you know what's strange about that? The whole time I worked in news, I never got like orders from on high or somebody telling me how to write a story or that I should suggest something along those lines, something that I hadn't been able to go out and check on myself. That may be true with the Times. I can't speak for them. I'm just speaking from my experience with the news media.
One more example. The Pew Research Center conducted a poll in 2004 and determined that only 7% of all journalists in the country describe themselves as conservatives. Well, when you have 90% plus who are presumably center or liberal, you're not going to ever get the other side, or rarely get the other side of the story.
I still didn't feel like that because we covered a lot of different political issues. We covered a lot of conservative, liberal types of things. And I felt like, for the most part, the people I worked with, that it was pretty much unbiased. It was pretty much neutral. Everyone made a real conscious effort to keep it that way and to not put their own opinions into it.
I'm going to dodge that topic for a minute just because we just did a whole another series on bias in the media, and we'll pick that up on those shows. But one thing, you say that there is, even in the public, a misunderstanding of the role of the DA and the defense attorney, and I wonder if the media plays a part in that. That you say, at least, that the DA, is after truth and justice, and that the defense attorney, by their role, is not really even trying to find the truth. The whole point is to get their client acquitted. I mean, is that accurate? What is the role, and is the media?
That is accurate, and I have no quarrel with that. And this is the best system there is. But Susan Estridge, some of your audience may know of her, is a professor of law at USC, and she wrote an op-ed piece in the Times. It was published in 1994, and in that piece she said that the only person in the courtroom in a trial who does not pledge to tell the truth or seek the truth is the defense attorney. And that's how our system is set up.
Is there a perception in the media, though, that the DAs are wrongly, well, you mentioned this fingerprinting case for the LAPD, but that the DA is the bad guy going after innocent people, or not? I mean, do you think the DAs are incorrectly characterized by the media or the public?
I don't know.
Their role?
I can't say that. I think that the media does a great job when they point out the failings of public institutions, like whether it's the DA's office or the LAPD. I think that this is in the public interest to highlight the fact that there are 7,000 DNA specimens that haven't been analyzed. This is a good thing. It's good journalism. I'm glad to see it.
Well, I think some of the misconception comes not just when we say media, not just like TV news or the newspaper, but like the movie of the week and some of these TV shows, these fictional shows. I think that's what blows things out of proportion and creates a lot of misconceptions for the public. And I
when
think
you get the dramatization of the hot story.
Yeah, I think that has more of an impact and influences people in a misleading way.
That may very well be true. There is so much on these TV crime lawyer shows that is just not true.
Well, Patty, in our final minute, we were talking about the, 9,000 cold cases in LA County for murder. How many make the news, and how do you choose which of those the hundreds of thousands of murders in this country, over time, get news coverage?
I think people have a tendency to go more for something that's either sensational, it was a very bizarre murder, it occurred under really strange circumstances, or it was really heinous, really horrible, or it might be something where it involves celebrities or very wealthy people or people that might be known to the public. I mean, there's so many, like you said, unsolved and like Jane Does, and people, we're never going to know who those people are. And if they're going to pick something, they're going to try and pick something that the most people will have the most interest in, and that would go along with notoriety, famous people, celebrity, or something really bizarre that happened.
I'm so sorry we're out of time. Thank you very much, Patty Malone, former TV anchor, and Walt Lewis,
Thanks for having me.
Former LA County Deputy District Attorney. His book is The Criminal Justice Club. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.